I felt something break inside my chest before I even understood why. My hands were shaking over the rail of my yacht's upper observation deck when the thought hit me like cold water. I am the billionaire who saw the future in the Atlas III prophecy. The night was warm, the ocean calm below me, but I couldn't steady my breathing as I looked up. Atlas III I hung above the horizon, elongated, rocky, glowing with blue fractures that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. I whispered that the prophecy couldn't be real, but the sky didn't care. I tried to turn away, but the tremor in my hands kept getting worse. I told myself it was just exhaustion. I had been running for months, not from the comet, but from the memory of Elena. She was the last person I ever let close years ago. Before I decided love was a liability I couldn't afford. She once told me my fear of connection would cost me more than losing her. I laughed at the time. I wasn't laughing now. A low vibration passed through the yacht deck, subtle but unmistakable. I froze and looked around. The engines were off. The entire vessel was still. Yet the deck plates under my shoes trembled again, a soft pulse in perfect sync with the comet's light. I checked my smartwatch. It flickered, glitched, then displayed a white spiral I had never seen before. My throat tightened. This wasn't coincidence. I walked toward the glass-walled research corner I had installed on the yacht years ago, more out of ego than curiosity. Now it felt like the only place I could stand without falling apart. I had spent my life trying to control outcomes, manipulate markets, dominate everything in reach. But standing there, watching my devices light up on their own, I felt smaller than I had in years. I lifted the tablet from the console. The screen turned on instantly, even though it had been powered off. Blue-teal lines spread across it, looping and intersecting like geometric veins. The patterns were precise, intelligent, intentional. My heartbeat synced with the pulses again, and a wave of heat rose through my chest. Something was coming. I didn't know what, but my body knew before my mind caught up. Suddenly my vision blurred, the deck dissolved around me. Warm golden light replaced the night sky. As if the world opened somewhere else entirely. I saw people walking slowly through a quiet coastal village. No cars, no noise, just gentle voices and soft laughter. Children ran barefoot near the water. Adults sat together by lantern light, speaking with calm eyes and unhurried hands. No fear, no loneliness, just presence. A version of that world pressed against me like a memory I never lived. I blinked hard and the vision snapped away. My knees weakened. I leaned on the console, struggling to breathe. This was too much, too real, too close. I had spent years pretending I didn't need anyone. And now the universe itself was showing me a future built entirely on connection. I wasn't ready for it, but I couldn't deny it anymore. The tablet vibrated sharply in my hand. All the lines on the screen froze, then shifted into a single sequence. 3 numbers, followed by a symbol. My chest tightened. It wasn't random. It wasn't noise. It was a location. And I knew exactly where it pointed. A place I had avoided for a decade. A place tied to the last night I saw Elena. My pulse hammered. The comet pulsed back. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a call. I didn't sleep after what happened on the yacht. The tablet with the coordinates stayed on my bedside table, glowing faintly through the night like it was breathing. When the sky started to lighten, I went back up to the observation deck. The ocean was still calm, but I wasn't. Every time I pictured the numbers on the screen, my stomach tightened. I knew exactly where they pointed, the old Coastal Arts Institute where Elena and I first met. I had avoided it for 10 years, ever since the night everything collapsed between us. I stood at the rail and forced myself to breathe. Atlas III, I was still visible, even though it was nearly dawn. A comet shouldn't linger that way, shouldn't pulse in steady rhythm, like it was waiting for me. My hands got cold. I kept thinking of that vision, the peaceful village, the way people looked at each other, the softness in their gestures. It wasn't fading like a dream. It stayed in my chest like a bruise. I walked down to the yacht's lower deck and called the crew. My voice shook slightly when I told them to ready the tender boat. I didn't want to admit to myself that I was scared, not of the coordinates, but of what I remembered about myself in that place, how closed off I was, how quickly I pushed people away. Elena saw it long before I did. The tender cut through the early morning water. I sat in the back, gripping the cold metal edge. Every wave made my heartbeat thrum harder. The tablet vibrated on my hand with the same soft pulse as the comet. Not urgent, insistent, almost patient. We reached the shore. I stepped onto the dock slowly. The air felt cooler here, humid with morning fog. I could see the outline of the Arts Institute at the top of the hill, old brick walls. Ivy crawling over the arches, the same place where Elena used to sketch late into the night. I stopped walking halfway up the path. My chest tightened again. I could almost hear her voice telling me that I was afraid of being known. I didn't want to remember that night, the argument, the way I shut down. The way she finally said she couldn't keep loving someone who refused to let himself feel anything. I swallowed hard and kept walking. My shoes crunched against the gravel. For a moment I felt like I was stepping back into a life I abandoned. Inside the main hall, everything smelled like old paper and dust. Sunlight spilled through tall windows in long pale stripes. The silence pressed against me, not empty but expectant. I walked toward the classroom where Elena used to paint. My heartbeat sped up. I didn't know why the comet wanted me here. I didn't know why the coordinates were so precise. But I felt something rising inside me, something I had buried years ago. When I opened the door, the room felt frozen in time. Wooden tables. Blank canvases leaning against the wall. A few glass jars with dried paint at the bottom. Suddenly my tablet turned on by itself. The coordinates disappeared. A new symbol appeared. Soft, white, spiraling outward, like a flower opening. My breath caught. It wasn't another instruction. It wasn't a location. It was inside me, a pull I couldn't explain. Something I felt rather than understood. A knowing, quiet and steady, telling me that this wasn't just about Elena. Or about the past. It was about who I was becoming. I closed my eyes and let the feeling settle. I needed to go somewhere else next. But I didn't know where yet. Only that I had to follow it. I left the Coastal Arts Institute behind and followed the road that curved into the valley. I didn't know why my chest felt so tight, or why each step made something inside me tremble, but I couldn't ignore the pull anymore. I walked toward the hills until the road vanished and the ground opened into a quiet meadow surrounded by tall golden grasses moving gently in the wind. The sky was still dim. Early morning light just beginning to break, and Atlas III hovered above the horizon like it was watching me. Its fractures glowed softer now, not urgent, not demanding, almost guiding. I stopped in the center of the field, feeling the cool earth under my shoes, and tried to steady my breath. For the first time since the yacht, there was no device vibrating in my hand. No coordinates. No signals. Only silence. A silence that felt like waiting. I closed my eyes for a moment. Elena's face came to mind, not the last argument we had, but one of the quiet afternoons before everything fell apart. She told me I was always running ahead of myself, too fast to see what I was losing. She was right. I didn't say it then, I didn't even know how. But the memory now felt warm instead of sharp. And that alone made my throat tighten. Suddenly my heartbeat changed. A pressure built behind my eyes, gentle, steady, unmistakable. I opened them quickly, knowing something was coming. The meadow blurred, the sky bent. And the world shifted around me, not sharply, but through a veil of soft mist that rose from the grass like breath from the earth. The air grew warmer, heavier, as if the comet's pulse was weaving threads of light into the fog. I was standing in a vast open field, not this one, but another version of it, brighter, calmer, alive in a way that made my chest rise on its own. The edges of everything shimmered in the haze, not quite solid, like a memory painted in watercolors that could dissolve if I reached too far. People moved slowly across the grass, their forms gentle and blurred at the fringes, speaking softly, holding hands. A row of children chased one another, their laughter echoing faintly through the mist, without fear. Lanterns glowed along a wooden path, lighting faces filled with warmth instead of hurry, faces that felt familiar, yet just out of focus. And then I saw him. A version of myself, older, steadier, with softer eyes and relaxed shoulders, emerging from the heart of the fog. His hair was lightly threaded with gray, his posture open like mine had never been. He wasn't rushing. He wasn't hiding, he wasn't armored. Elena was beside him, smiling in a way I hadn't seen since before I let my fear ruin everything, her outline soft in the mist, as if she were both here and not. My breath broke. My knees weakened. The scene wasn't just beautiful, it was a correction, a fragile glimpse through the veil, reminding me of who I could become if I stopped clinging to the man I thought I had to be. A mist swirled closer, carrying the scent of sea salt and wildflowers, pulling at something deep in my chest. The vision faded slowly, like a tide receding through thinning fog, until the real meadow returned, crisp, grounded, but forever changed. I exhaled shakily, tears gathering before I could stop them. I wiped my face, but more came. Not grief. Release. My chest felt open for the first time in years. I looked up at Atlas 3I again. The comet pulsed once, then twice. Then a long, slow third time. Like a heartbeat syncing with mine. I didn't need a device to interpret it. The meaning rose inside me with absolute clarity. It wasn't asking me to predict the future. It was asking me to become part of it. I stepped forward into the tall grass, feeling the wind lift around my shoulders. I didn't know where the path ahead led. I didn't know if I would ever see Elena again. But for the first time, I wasn't moving to escape something. I was moving to follow something. I touched my chest, feeling the warmth there, and the tears finally spilled down my face. Full, unhidden, honest. I wasn't alone. I had never been alone. And now I didn't want to be,